We will see a new format that we've never seen before, a new movement we've never seen before the games, and a new piece of equipment we've never seen before.
CrossFit's awesome.
This will be a super fun video, so much to talk about. And at the end of the video, I've got a short clip of Adrian Bozman articulating what the CrossFit Games should be in his words, and it's worth sticking around for. So do that, and if you're here for the first time, make sure that you join the tribe, hit subscribe, and leave me a comment. I always get back to you in the comments. I'd love to chat. So let's get into it. What is up, you sexy beasts? Oh man, that shirt is definitely on the border of being too tight, eh? But hope you are doing fantastic. Today we're going to be talking Adrian Bozman, CrossFit Games programming. Old Adrian, eh? He's been on a bit of a, you can almost call it a podcast tour to some degree over the last 7 days. He started off appearing on the Talking Elite Fitness podcast with Tommy Marquez and Sean Woodland. He then went on to Coffee Pods and Wads with my man Peter. Great podcast, highly recommend it. And then finally, he was on the official CrossFit Games podcast with Chase Ingram. So 3 podcasts, all kind of discussing the topic of games programming, what Boz's approach is he going to change the games altogether? Is he going to stay true to the roots? All that kind of good stuff. And then, of course, Mr. Sevan and the boys did a great podcast on the same topic as well. So today, I thought I'll just bring it all together for you, you know, like I do, just in a little nice, neat little package, 15, 20 minutes, who knows. But if you have the time, please go ahead and watch the full podcast, the Talking Elite Fitness one, Coffee Pods and Wads, official CrossFit Games, and Sevan. If you have the time, go watch them all. If I had to recommend one of them, I'm going to recommend Peter's podcast on Coffee Pods and Wads. Peter is a funny dude. He asks the hard questions and he's got no affiliation to CrossFit. So I feel like he really got the best out of Boz on his podcast. So if you have to go watch one, go and watch Peter's one. Let's start with something fun, the heavy lift. CrossFit Games released this little video that I'll show you shortly, saying that Saturday night, the heavy lift is back.
Has it. He hits this, he wins the event. Toomey is going to take it. Toomey wins for the win. There is no doubt. Once again, Tia-Clair's his 3rd event win of the 2021 Noble CrossFit Games. Toomey for the win. And 2 for Toomey. 100 points and 2 straight event wins for the defending CrossFit Games champion.
And there go the goosebumps.
So Boz doesn't reveal anything about the heavy lift, but I've got a little theory. Back in 2015, we saw the Wonder Max clean and jerk. Then the following year, there was a break from the Wonder Max and they did a speed ladder instead. But then in 2017, the snatch, Wonder Max snatch came up. Then in 2018, they took a break from the Wonder Max lift and did a speed ladder again. Then in 2019, they did the Wonder Max clean. 2020, they took a break from the Wonder Max lift. They did the CrossFit Total that year. And then last year, 2021, we saw the Wonder Max snatch return. And then now we're in 2022. So the Wonder Max lifts came up in 2015, 17, 19, and 21, every other year. So if this pattern holds true, that means that this year we won't be seeing a Wonder Max lift, but instead we'll see a complex or a speed ladder or something along those lines. So that's my first question for you, is what is going to be the heavy lift on Saturday night? I would love to see a heavy thruster from the ground, you know, like a clean first and then into a thruster. That'll be a beautiful thing to see. By saying all that, we haven't seen the Wonder Max clean and jerk since 2015. So 2017 was a snatch, 2019 was a Wonder Max clean, last year was the snatch again. So we haven't actually seen the Wonder Max clean and jerk since 2015, so that could be another option. Let's have a look at the official schedule that's been released by the CrossFit Games. The individuals and teams will start on Wednesday, they'll then have a rest day on Thursday, and then have 3 days of competition in a row, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The age group and adaptive athletes, on the other hand, will just have a 3-day competition, starting on Thursday and finishing on Saturday. So looking at the schedule, there is a total of 11 blocks where workouts could take place in. That doesn't mean that we'll see 11 events. There could obviously be events that have multiple scored parts to it, and so we could end up seeing 12, 13, or up to 15 scored events in total. Who knows? One thing that Boz does point out on the schedule is that for the first time in CrossFit Games history, the teams will actually see out the CrossFit Games. They'll be the last to go. The main reason for this is the broadcasting times they got given. They really wanted to highlight the individuals and therefore had to make them earlier in the day. But also, we could see Rich Froning's team go head to head with Annie's team in that final heat if all goes to plan. And who knows if this might be the last year for Rich and Annie. And so if that is the case, if either of them decide to retire or announce their retirement, this could be a really cool way to kind of celebrate their careers and what they've brought to the sport by giving them that last spot on the Sunday night. Okay, the most interesting thing to me that Boz talked about last week was in the CrossFit Games podcast with Chase Ingram. He says that he is very aware of where your typical CrossFit Games athlete is lacking and the areas that perhaps all of them have not been that diligent in. Now, if you look at the different modalities that we use as CrossFitters, weightlifting, gymnastics, and conditioning, have a think about the specialists in these areas, the weightlifters. How close are the CrossFitters numbers to the top weightlifters? We have people like Tia-Clair who's actually competing in weightlifting and winning gold medals at the Commonwealth Games. And so, you could argue that the CrossFitters weightlifting numbers, they're getting closer and closer to professional weightlifters. When you look at something like a row perhaps, again, you could argue that the top times as CrossFitters, they're sneaking closer and closer to the world records and the top people in those fields. But there's one particular area that CrossFitters are miles and miles and miles behind, and that is gymnastic strength, gymnastic skill and strength. And JR from CrossFit Crash, who was on the Sevan podcast, made a very, very good point. He went back and looked at the last 7 months of the main site, the CrossFit main site workouts, and tried to pick out some movements that were coming up regularly over the last 7 months. Two of these movements that he picked up was the L-sit legless row climb. So starting your row climb in a seated position with your legs out in front and then maintaining that L-sit position as you climb the rope. The other movement is the strict pull-up. Apparently that's come up 10 times in the last 7 months, and 6 out of those 10 times it was weighted. And then the last movement that JR mentions is the L-sit into a handstand hold. And it's interesting because Boz says on the podcast with Chase that egos will be bruised, that athletes will run into a challenge where they are, going to be humiliated perhaps. And so I think JR's got a very compelling argument here. I think the CrossFit Games main site is a great indicator of what might show up at the games, but also Adrian is a very purist CrossFitter. He's been there from the start pretty much. He's part of, he's always been part of the L1, Level 1 seminar staff, and I would very much consider him a CrossFit purist and someone who would hold very true to some of the things that Glasman preached. And obviously Glasman came from a gymnastics background, talked a lot about being upside down in your hands, L-sits, those kind of movements. And so I think JR might be onto something when it comes to a gymnastic strength test that could really bruise some egos at the CrossFit Games this year. Then on the Coffee, Pods and WODs podcast, Adrian talks about a workout that the entire field will do, masters, teens, teams, and individuals. And he goes on to say that even people like us at home would also be able to do this workout. And so that's very interesting. What can be a workout that we could all do? And obviously we know that they've released that track that goes into Madison from the stadium. It's about a 5K track. And in my mind, it's something that we could all do. It's something that the whole field could do on the day. And fun fact, the 5K run is the most repeated workout on the CrossFit Games main site ever. So again, for me, there's enough evidence there to maybe speculate with some form of accuracy that the 5K run could just be a test this year. And who knows what else they're going to do in Madison once they arrive from that run. But that 5K run could be a scored event in itself, followed then by whatever the workout is going to be. Obviously, we've talked about the equipment that will be available within Madison City when they arrive there. But that's not to say that we could see a 2-part workout. And I just think the 5K run is something we can all do and then compare across the board. So that one makes sense for me. that is a video that the CrossFit Games released earlier this month, and it's pretty obvious that it is someone testing a workout in the pool. And again, if you look at the main site, swimming events have come up more than they have in the past in recent days, and so you can't help but think we're going to have a pool swimming event at the CrossFit Games this year. CrossFit has also released their cuts system for this year, and I think they finally have got it right. They finally nailed it. They are cutting the individual team from 40 athletes down to 30. It's only cutting 10 athletes at the end of Saturday. So all athletes will have 4 full days of competition to make it into the top 30, and then just the top 30 will go into the final day. I think this is a great balance. It gives enough athletes a chance. The main reason I like this, that they have 30 people in the field on the last day, is that if you have a deficiency in any skill or any area of strength, you can really get punished for it, because there's a lot of athletes that can come in between you and the top of the field. Whereas if you only have 20 or even 10 athletes left on the final day and you have a deficiency, you don't get punished for it as much, because you just don't have the number of athletes that could then get in between you and the top guys or girls. And so I really like this. The teams will go from 38 down to 20 teams again at the end of Saturday. If you were the games programmer and you wanted to introduce something new to the games, you could do it in 3 ways. You can introduce a new format to a workout, you could introduce a new movement, or you can introduce a new piece of equipment. And when Chase asked Boz which one of these things will happen this year, Boz said that all 3 those things will happen. We will see a new format that we've never seen before, a new movement we've never seen before the games, and a new piece of equipment we've never seen before. Not only that, but he says that when it comes to the new equipment, the teams are going to have, in some cases, an opportunity to play with the equipment before the individuals. So what this means is that the individuals can observe what the teams are doing with this new piece of gear. And obviously we've got some amazing talent in the team's field. If Rich Froning or Annie Thorisdottir is having a play with a new piece of equipment that no one's used before, it's going to be worthwhile observing and watching what they do before you go and take the field as an individual. And obviously it's just a super cool thing for all the other divisions to also have a go at playing with the new gear. Before we wrap up this video and have a look at Boz's explanation of what the CrossFit Games should be to all of us, to the athletes, the community, one thing he talked about that I've never really thought about was last year's performance of Tia-Clair Toomey winning the long event that was over an hour, then winning the sprint, which was like under a minute, and then also winning the lifting event. 3 completely different domains: an endurance event, a sprint event, and a lifting event. One athlete, dominating in all 3 of those areas. It is an amazing feat. And if you think about what we're trying to achieve with the CrossFit Games, we are claiming to crown the fittest person on earth. And often we can think of it as just a little throwaway comment, it's just kind of our slogan as CrossFitters. But if you actually think about that claim and how legit it is when it comes to how amazing our athletes is, it really is true. I can't think of another athlete that could achieve that. And I'd love for anyone who thinks that they have an athlete that could achieve that to bring them along and compete at the CrossFit Games, because I truly believe that we do have the fittest athletes in the world. My overall takeaway from all these podcasts is that Adrian Bozman is a CrossFit purist. He's also a fitness minimalist. He talks a lot about getting the most out of a simple workout, and I think that might be reflected in this year's CrossFit Games. But he also talks about honoring the history of the games, honoring Dave, and having a through line. He definitely doesn't talk about doing things completely different this year. He talks about getting to the end of this season and being able to see the through line from, say, 2017 to the end of this season, be able to see the continuity. And so I think we're in for a treat. There's a few new things that he's kind of teasing. In fact, he says that they will be teasing the workouts and releasing hints, which is really cool. So that should be coming hopefully this week, I imagine. But let's just watch, to finish off the video, let's watch this little clip from Coffee Pods and Wads, where Adrian talks about what the CrossFit Games is to him and what it should be for all of us. So enjoy this, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Mwah.
That it's really important to me that, the games, obviously it's a transitional year. It's got to be what people expect it to be. It's got to be this epic, complete test, and it's got to be big, and it's got to showcase the athletes, and it's got to stretch the athletes, and it's got to frustrate some of the athletes. And it's got to be all of these things. And it's got to be inspirational to the community, and it's got to give people something to rally around, and it's got to inspire people to get back in the gym and say, hey, you know what? I could take my own fitness a little bit further, and I could be a little bit more diligent about my own lifestyle habits and things like that. And I feel it's really important on a personal level to reflect all of that, because that's what I believe the games to be. It's this big festival from this niche community that believes in this thing enough to be interested in all aspects of it. And again, I'm rambling. I don't know how articulate I'm being, but it is important to me to carry that torch. And obviously I'm going to do it in my own way. And obviously there's going to be some things that are going to be a little bit different because of that, but it's rooted in the tradition of what CrossFit is, and by extension, what the CrossFit Games are.